One of the biggest mistakes many students make while reading research papers is thinking they must understand everything from the very first line. So they open a paper, start reading word by word, get stuck in complex terminology, equations, or statistical analysis, and within 15 minutes they feel mentally exhausted. Eventually, many students begin believing that research papers are too difficult for them. But honestly, the problem is usually not intelligence. The problem is the reading strategy. Research papers are not novels. You're not supposed to read them from beginning to end in a perfectly linear way. In fact, many experienced researchers do not read papers that way at all. One of the most effective methods is called the three-pass approach, and once you understand this method, reading papers becomes much less stressful and much more productive. The first pass is about getting the big picture. Think of it like scanning a map before starting a journey. During this stage, you do not try to understand every detail. Instead, you quickly go through the title, abstract, headings, figures, tables, and conclusion. You are trying to answer simple questions. What is this paper about? Why was this research done? What problem are they trying to solve? What methods did they use? And what did they find? This first pass may only take 5 to 10 minutes, but it prepares your brain to process the paper more effectively later. Without this overview, many students get lost immediately. The second pass is where deeper understanding begins. Now you start reading more carefully, but still without putting pressure on yourself to understand every single sentence. Focus on the main ideas, important methods, graphs, and overall logic of the study. Try to connect the results with the objectives. Ask yourself questions while reading. Why did they choose this method? Does this result make sense? What is the key message here? You can also take short notes in your own words. This is extremely important because active thinking improves comprehension far more than passive reading. And then comes the third pass, the stage where real mastery happens. This is where you critically analyze the paper. At this point, you may revisit complex sections, equations, statistical analyses, or methods in detail. You begin evaluating the strengths and weaknesses of the study. Could the methodology be improved? Are there limitations? Do the conclusions truly match the results? This stage transforms you from someone who only reads research into someone who actually thinks like a researcher. One thing many students do not realize is that confusion during research reading is completely normal. Even PhD students and experienced researchers often reread sections multiple times. Sometimes I personally revisit the same paragraph several times before fully understanding the idea. Research papers are designed for scientific communication, not entertainment. They often contain dense information compressed into a few pages. So struggling at first does not mean you are incapable. It simply means you are learning. Another important habit is learning to read strategically instead of emotionally. Many students panic the moment they see difficult equations, advanced statistics, or unfamiliar terminology. But you do not need to master every detail immediately. Sometimes understanding 60-70% of a paper is already enough to gain valuable insights. Over time, repeated exposure naturally improves your scientific vocabulary and analytical ability. And honestly, one of the best ways to improve research reading is consistency. The first few papers may feel painful, the next few become manageable. After reading dozens or hundreds of papers, your brain starts recognizing patterns automatically. Common structures, methods, statistical approaches, and scientific writing styles. Eventually, papers that once looked impossible begin to feel surprisingly readable. At the end of the day, reading research papers is not about memorizing complicated sentences. It is about learning how researchers think, how scientific problems are solved, and how knowledge is built step by step. Once you stop trying to understand everything perfectly in one sitting and start reading strategically, research papers become far less intimidating and much more powerful for your academic growth.